Welcome to Impact Farming, where we introduce you to the people and ideas that will have a massive impact on your farming operation. Brought to you by Farm Marketer. Sit down, start the engine, and let's roll with today's show.
Hello everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of the Impact Farming Show. You guys are joining me for part 2 of a mini series that we are doing on transition planning. Back with me this week is George Sinker and Joe Hentz, and we are picking up directly where we left off on the last episode. So do me a favor, guys, if you didn't catch the last episode, stop right now and go back, because most of what we're gonna say here isn't gonna make sense unless you've heard the last one. So let's get to it, guys. We met as a family. You guys have been hired. You've talked to us about our needs, and now you went back to your office and chatted as a team to come up with a plan. You're back at my farm table, and you guys are presenting. Let's go.
So I think that the other thing we did is, if you recall, we met with each of your family members and we interviewed them separately.
Yes.
And then we took that information back to the office and we got out a funnel and we had this ream of information. And so we analyzed that information and we came out with some common themes, high-level themes that we saw in the family circle and in the business circle and in the ownership circle.
Okay.
And with your particular family,
We are amazing, right?
you are amazing. We all have our little peccadillos to deal with, though.
Oh, okay,
And,
okay. I probably have a few.
So the one thing that we saw in the family area is a theme you may want to consider is that perhaps you might want to consider how to further the communication and make sure that there is communication with all the family members, and that everybody in the family feels that they're having a voice and able to participate. So the one thing we saw, Tracy, about the family is it's a great family. It's a legacy family. You're interested in keeping the farming business together. You're interested in having your other business that you're operating as well. And so that's another theme that came out, is that this is a legacy farm. We need to take a look at the communication a little bit. We need to perhaps take a look at how family is going to get involved in the business in the future.
Okay.
So one of the themes there might be, do we perhaps consider setting up a family council where we can have some policies that relate to re-entering the business? Do you have to work outside the family before you can come back? And then, so we looked a little bit at the business circle too, and one of the themes that came out there is that, again, the financials are supporting a great business. Like a lot of families, you're so busy working in the business that you haven't had time to work on the business. So we're going to perhaps consider as a theme, it might be something that you would want to consider some sort of standard operating procedures so that we can take it up a notch and professionalize the business. And so that was a theme we saw in the business. Okay. And then when we went to the ownership side of things, what we want to do there is, you know what you're doing right now, and we think it's important that you have some governance procedures in place to shore up that ownership in terms of we should be putting together a shareholders agreement to talk about What if someone wants to come into your business? What if you and your husband are directors of this business, but you're the shareholder of the business, and so we should have a contract, a shareholders agreement that will set out rights and obligations so everybody knows the expectations. And then we took a look at something else. We took a look at is another theme was, well, we saw that there were no domestic contracts in place, and this is something you may want to consider, something you may not want to consider, that since you founded the business, the question becomes, do you want to have some sort of an agreement in place? If there ever was a separation or divorce, how would the business be dealt with? Mm-hmm. And so we've come up with some of these common themes. There were more. We'll let you look at these themes. We may even leave this report, if you prefer, it's in draft form. We can leave it with you for a few days to consider. You don't have to make any immediate decisions. But if you think that this feedback that we've given you in this little mini report mirrors what you were thinking and what your concerns are, then the next part of this would be, because Joe's had an opportunity to analyze your financial statements and take a look at retirement planning and take a look at a financial assessment of the business. He is going to be able to offer you some options and alternatives here today. So
it's decision time, I guess, now. You've got the information before you.
Okay.
You've got the financial plans. There's been a business plan done. Usually you've got the retirement plan for the generation that's transitioning. Okay. And the generation that's coming in has their business plan. They want to grow. Hopefully by this time now we have two plans in front that would support each other. You can make the decision that the retirement plan is secure if you select option B for the business plan. So moderate growth secures the future of the retiring generation, and the family's been able to make some sort of decision on where they want to take the business.
Okay.
And where the retiring generation or the transitioning generation feels stable financially, that they're going to not have to start from scratch.
Okay.
So those options are presented to you. There's other options that need to be presented to you, and from an accounting perspective, the other one is control. When is control going to transfer over? Hopefully a decision's been made or there's been some sort of arrangement. Maybe now is the time where more control is going to be transferred to the generation that's coming in. Or maybe we're delaying it for various reasons. Maybe the people that are coming in want to take more of a management role but aren't ready for that ownership role. And that might be because the stage of life they're at. They're not married, which may lead to, it complicates things if there is a future marital breakdown for that generation coming in for the whole business. That it's more difficult to plan for when somebody's in their 20s versus when someone's in their 30s or 40s for that generation coming in. So we're going to want to look at that. And if there is a transfer of control, we're going to want to come up with a tax plan that facilitates that control on the most tax advantageous basis. What we don't want to have the business incur is a tax bill that doesn't necessarily need to be there. And there's a number of mechanisms in which you can transfer shares or farm property to the next generation on a tax deferred basis. So those things you're going to want to take into account. It's a complex number of complex issues kind of coming together at once here, but all of those need to be addressed, and that's why your advisors work closely together.
And that's all the work that you guys have done behind the scenes. You come here and go, this is based on what you've told us. Here's a few ideas of how we think this can go.
And in different areas, we're also probably going to give you a management transfer idea, which will discuss the transfer of labor and management, and it will also perhaps indicate gaps, and then there will be some suggestions for filling those gaps, whether it be by way of education or whether it be by way of mentorship. So in other words, where are the successors at today, and where do they need to be to take full ownership?
I love that.
And then once you decide on how you wish to proceed, you're not going to do everything at once, so we'll provide you with an action plan, which you'll prioritize. And that action plan will talk about the action items that are immediate, can be done in 6 months, can be done over 2 years, and you will tell us what the timing is for this. And then we will also want to put together a contingency plan for what if things didn't occur as they were expected to occur.
Okay.
And Joe can talk about the different issues in contingency.
Well, I think just to build on one point George mentioned earlier, I mean, this really is a process, not an event. It's not something that you just strike off one day, transition plan is done.
Okay.
It's something that's going to be constantly revisited, and the plans that George has talked about that are being put together here will take a number of years to implement, and it kind of could ebb and flow. You could be moving in one direction, but life happens.
Okay.
Unexpected death or illness.
Okay.
And you really do not want to be planning start your transition planning when a critical event happens.
Yeah.
So having this process started, the contingency plans will be built in, perhaps insurance are looked at. If you don't have insurance available right now, that will keep the financial stability of the business going while the key person may have health issues that they have to deal with. Marital breakdown is a big one. Usually not among the transitioning generation, although we are seeing a little bit more of that than we used to in the past, but usually it's a transitioning generation worrying about the succeeding generation, the one that's coming in. And if they suffer marital breakdown, how that divorce will affect the business, because it's so intertwined with the family. So those are issues that need to be looked at and can be planned to mitigate the level of impact that could have if it were to occur on the business itself.
And it's very, very important from the founder's point of view. You know, if you've worked in this business for 45 years and you've made a successful business and, you know, the financial capital is there, the last thing you want to have happen is for a separation or a divorce to cause your whole life's work to come tumbling down.
Yeah.
And so rightly so, it's a delicate subject, but
we're walking on coals now. Let's do it.
on the other hand, you're dealing with advisors and lawyers, and the hard reality is that there are matrimonial issues that occur out there, and they need to be looked at.
What's the stat? Over 50% of marriages fail. So, you know, I say we're walking on coals, but why stick our head in the sand? We want to make sure that we plan for the farm operation so that that doesn't make the farm crumble. And I think as much as we don't want to talk about it, that's why I'm here.
It's very important.
Yeah.
And I think, I mean, there isn't really, it's not co-have agreement or nothing. I mean, those are difficult conversations to have with your daughter or son-in-law who's coming into the family to say, well, welcome to the family, but guess what, this marriage isn't happening until you sign off on this agreement. I mean, that is usually the most preferred option. But there's different levels of protection that can be offered, and it depends on the risk that you're willing to assume. So it's not necessarily that, you know, there's a one-size-fits-all solution to make sure that you can sleep at night, not have to worry about a marital breakdown affecting the business. But the timing of the transfers of control or ownership of the property is one way we can protect against that potential outcome. The other one is a cohabitation agreement. But there are some solutions that you should talk to your advisors about. And it's not always, there might be a simpler solution than you think as well.
Okay, so we've kind of opened the lid on that can of worms, and I know you guys, and you touched on it a little bit already. I'm going to get you to go there, but you came back to the table and you presented a plan, and that was a lot more painless than I thought. You know, even me sitting here listening to this, I'm feeling better. Really, all you did was talk to our family. You figured out what was important, figured out where we want this to go, and then you took your professional capacity, your individuals, and said, okay, if that's where you want to go, here's some options on how to get there.
It's your plan, not our plan.
I like that. And you know what? Honestly, I'm not just saying this for the camera. I'm feeling good walking through this, because sometimes you think it's going to be just crazy, and that no, this is our plan. We're just bringing in those smart brains, and it doesn't have to happen right away. We don't want to delay, but at least we go, oh, if we want this to happen, my goodness, we need our kids to go and do this or this. And it's a roadmap, right?
It's a roadmap, and rest assured that we're going to be checking back with you to make sure that
I'm not saying I'm procrastinating, but it felt good that I was kind of thinking of it as a just pressure. I know we need to do it, but you guys are just coming in and putting my plan together.
And Tracy, in a lot of cases, once we've been retained to do this transition plan, we'll get lots of calls back because life happens and other issues happen, and there may be people are thinking, well, maybe we should do up some sort of a family charter or a family constitution that talks about when can people come into the business, when can people participate, what will the compensation look like, and on an ad hoc basis we can contract with the family to help them design their first family meeting and create an agenda for it, so that they get talking and they communicate and they develop that trust. Or maybe they want to put together this family charter, which is sort of their values, vision, mission going forward, so that they've got something to look at. This is our family, and this is how we envision the future. And they just need a little assist for maybe a day or half a day of our time.
Okay, that's good to know.
So it's not just transition planning. There's lots of other areas that people will call us in for.
Well, and I like how you say that. I go from the business world, my business over here, where I hire people according to budgets and needs, not just because it's a family member and they want to be back on the farm. And how many times do children go off and they go, okay, I want to come back. Well, wait a minute. Yeah, I'm thinking as a parent, yeah, we'd love to have you back here, but you want to draw a wage. Did we have a discussion if the farm can support that? And I don't know if some people may be thoughtful about that. Others might feel pressured and just bring one more in.
I have a huge family operation right now where there were two brothers, and one brother brought his son back in to do part of the job of his sibling, which has now caused my client to be upset and has caused the family to actually fire my client from his employment. And it was all because there was no discussion when this person was brought. There were no rules, no discussion, no policies. It's just my son's coming back, whether you like it or not. And they are running a large corporation.
Oh, wow.
You wouldn't do that at IBM.
No, I wouldn't do that at my business. Somebody doesn't just show up and say, I'm working, give me a paycheck. Mm-hmm. It's what are my needs as a business? What role are you going to fill? And I need to pencil you in as an expense. Can we support that, right? So
you have those, again, it's communication and discussion.
Okay. So do you guys, I know there's different pieces and contracts. Do you want to speak to some of those that you might come to the table with? I think marriage contracts and...
Yeah, so we'll start off with one for the business. From the business perspective, an ownership, a shareholders agreement, if you are incorporated.
Okay.
More and more we're finding with businesses as they grow, it makes sense from a tax perspective and even from a planning and continuity perspective that they incorporate. So we're finding more farm businesses to be incorporated. Okay. And so in that case, it does make sense to have a shareholders agreement. And some of the key things you're going to want to address in a shareholders agreement is how to get out. So if somebody wants out, or if you need to force somebody out, how are you going to do that? This is really important, especially if there's siblings with their own spouses in there. If somebody is going through a divorce, your brother or sister is having a marital breakdown, how you can potentially protect the business or isolate the business from that family situation that's happening.
So that can go in a shareholder agreement.
You can have certain options for them to either leave or be bought out over a period of time rather than I'm leaving, here's the value of my shares, pay me out, and I'm leaving now.
Okay.
So it's all about protecting the business so we can continue to survive through these family or life events. Unexpected death can be dealt with in a shareholders agreement as well.
Okay.
And we've talked about insurance in place, life insurance, to help the surviving siblings buy out the shares of the other person. So the person who passed unexpectedly, they could have their own family that still needs support somehow from the farm. And insurance might be one vehicle to provide them support going forward.
Okay.
Shareholders agreement, you're also going to want to address how decisions are going to be made. what percentage of votes need to be made to go to the bank and get another $100,000 loan to buy a new tractor. Those are all decisions. Is it just somebody can go and sign up a bank agreement, or do we need 2 or 3 or both of us?
I can't just go to town and buy a combine without the siblings?
Not for the price of combines are worth it.
This is no fun, you guys. I'm just
I've
joking.
seen it done.
That's why I'm saying it, because that's kind of falling in line with thoughtful business decisions to take that impulse out. Sorry, carry on.
And even if you weren't incorporated, perhaps you're running a partnership between father and son or brother and sister, and a partnership agreement will work in the same fashion.
Okay.
So how to deal with property, how to deal with make decisions.
Okay.
That's one of the key legal agreements I think that you would see from a business perspective and ownership perspective. We've talked already about marriage contracts and covered off on that.
Okay. Do you want to talk about that a little bit more?
Sure.
I'm taking that can of worms and just dumping it on the table. I know, well, with divorce rates as they are, and I don't know that many people are thoughtful. Who thinks about that? Who wants to talk about it? Spouses just, brothers, sisters, they marry people, they come in, and now divorce happens. So what are you saying? What's a marriage contract? Because I think for myself and many people out there, this is the first time we're really hearing about that. This isn't Hollywood. We're not used to that, right?
Sure. So, it's a contract between spouses.
Okay.
In order to be effective, you need a full financial disclosure. So it's not something where you can hide the value of the corporation. So there needs to be transparency.
Okay.
You need to say, here's the property I have, there's the property you have. It's best if they have independent legal advice. We strongly recommend that.
Okay.
So it can't be overturned that someone was not advised. It shouldn't be under duress either. It shouldn't be on the step of the chapel to get
Of
married.
the church? By the way, I forgot.
Well in advance of getting married.
That'd be a little awkward. Yeah.
And essentially, I think from we'll keep it as a farm business. What you're trying to achieve is to say, whether they're an owner or not, here's the farm property that I have or may be entitled to, and the other spouse is essentially disclaiming any interest in that property.
Okay.
And Joe, just for our viewers, that marriage contract, so in Ontario, typically if we don't have a marriage contract and you separate, there's an equalization of net family property.
Mm-hmm.
But you can design this marriage contract so that the non-farming assets are in no way affected or excluded from a claim. Is that right?
That's right.
Okay, so I want to do a situation here. I like putting it to a real situation. I'm a daughter on a big dairy farm here in Woodstock. My family farm is worth a lot of money. I'm a shareholder in our corporation here, okay? I farm with my 2 brothers, so it's the 3 of us. I've been dating, I've decided that I'm getting married. So what you're saying is a marriage contract. Let's say Bob, I'm dating Bob, and we want to protect the farm in case Bob and I get married and then we separate.
Mm-hmm.
So what we're saying here is there's going to be a marriage contract where it's presented to Bob and it says what I own as the farm stays with the farm in case we split up. But let's say whatever we accumulate together, we can split that 50-50?
Correct. Exactly.
Is that right? Okay.
And, going back again to the family advisor's role in creating family policies, this can be part of those policies, is that in the event that there are marriages, that those people agree and understand that they will have to enter into a domestic contract, a marriage contract, or if they're not married, a cohabitation agreement.
Okay.
So that when you got those shares, you'd already had those family meetings to discuss this, and it shouldn't come as a shock to you that you're going to be asked to sign a marriage contract.
I must say this is very uncomfortable, guys. But you know what? How important? Because
it's much more uncomfortable, Tracy, after the fact when it blows up.
Yeah, when my failed marriage causes the family farm to fall apart.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah, it can be, number 1, it's stressful. Number 2, it's hugely expensive in legal fees, accounting fees, where for the sake of a few $1,000s to put together a will
and a couple uncomfortable conversations.
Yeah.
That isn't that what marriage is about?
Yeah, I guess start off with the hardest one of all, right?
Yes.
When my client comes into the office and says that, but Mr. Sinker, we're in love, then I know it's going to be an uphill battle to discuss this contract. But the conversation has to be had.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, so we just finished the uncomfortable conversation of marriage contracts. I'm assuming everything's going to get a lot easier from here, I hope.
Absolutely.
Start with the hard one. Okay, so take it away. What are other pieces of this puzzle here?
Yeah, certainly. So, I mean, another critical piece that we need to have is a will in place for everybody, especially those who are the current owners of the farm. Even if you have a plan in place with a family, and for whatever reasons, there's multiple reasons that we've discussed already, ownership isn't going to pass down for a couple of years. If the current owners who hold the shares of the farm property don't have a will in place, they'll die in Ontario what's called intestate, meaning that the legislation comes in and says who's going to get what, and that might not work for the farm plan. So everything is out the window. All the planning we've done no longer works because there's multiple beneficiaries and it's not how you direct it. So having a will in place is essential for everybody.
Okay.
It allows your plan to be implemented how you wish. It also allows for an option to save on taxes. For corporate farms, you can have what's called dual wills. One will deals with your personal assets,
Okay.
and those are the things that need to be probated. Perhaps you've moved off the farm now and you have...
What is probate?
Probate is the tax that you pay in order to get a will stamped that it is a valid and subsisting will. It's a tax paid at the time after somebody passes.
Okay.
And it's required to deal with certain property in Ontario.
Okay.
Bank accounts over a certain amount and real property.
And it confirms that it is the valid last will.
Okay. Okay.
So you have your first will that deals with your personal assets, any property you own in your own name.
Okay.
And then you have a second will that deals with mostly just shares of a private corporation, your farming corporation. And that will doesn't need to be probated.
Okay.
So you have significant value sitting in your secondary will. And probate is based on the value of the assets of the estate. So where you limit the value of your primary will by just your personal assets, the amount of probate you pay is significantly less to what potentially is in a farming corporation.
Okay.
So not only are you saving it, you're making it easier for your estate trustees to implement your plan.
And in
By splitting
Ontario,
them up.
Yes.
in Ontario, sometimes we do have clients that get carried away with trying to do strange things to avoid probate. Probate fees in Ontario, or estate administration tax as it's actually, on the first $50,000, it's a half a point,
Okay.
$250. Thereafter, it is 1.5%.
Okay.
So we have clients who think that probate fees amounts to a third of the estate. It doesn't, but it can be a substantial number,
Okay.
just for your viewers.
Okay.
And-
Good to know.
and
I
each
guess
of-
the more you have, the more you're going to pay, right?
And each of the provinces, I believe Ontario has one of the highest probate fees in the province, and I am not sure, each province sets their own probate fees.
Okay.
The other thing you're going to want is a power of attorney, one for personal care and property. And the power of attorney is only effective while you're living. Your will kicks in the moment you pass. But
Okay.
the power of attorney details for property. If you are incapable of managing your property, it could also be effective when you are capable of managing property, but perhaps you're going on a trip, you're taking your retirement and you're enjoying it, and you're going for 3 months overseas. It allows your appointed power of attorney to deal with your assets, deal with your real property, deal with your bank accounts, so that decisions can still be made, especially if you maintain an ownership interest in the farm.
Okay.
A power of attorney for personal care becomes a moment a doctor says you can no longer make medical decisions on your behalf. And that deals with where you're going to live, what kind of treatment, health care you're going to receive, what kind of living standards you're going to have. So those are all important documents that anyone has, but especially business owners want to have in place.
Okay.
And Joe, one other document that over the years has become more and more important as far as I'm concerned is sometimes when an estate is administered, Aunt Mary will leave her farm to her nephews, her two nephews, or her nephew and her niece. What could you talk a little bit about, rather than just registering the deed in the name of the nephew and the niece, the co-ownership agreements that we're now putting in place so that there's some certainty around how that property is co-owned and what everybody's rights and obligations are?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, especially if it hasn't been part of the plan that we've talked about from the first phase. If you've missed that process or you haven't had a chance to go through that process, putting two people in a position of ownership and into business together that might not want to been in business together could rise to conflict or lead to conflict. Often to avoid conflict, it is nice to have that co-ownership agreement negotiated beforehand or at the time that it's transferred into. And a co-ownership agreement will address very similar things that we talked about in a shareholders agreement. How decisions are to be made, how if somebody wants to deal with a property, how do they get out, how is it sold. Those are all important things, and it just once again sets a process to that the owners can go through to limit the amount of conflict and the amount of decisions that would have to be made in the future for unforeseen events.
Now going back one step really quick, because there's a lot to what you guys just said, but rest assured, when you come, you guys are going to make presentations. Let's say I don't have my will yet. I'm at this point and I didn't even get my will, or I did it when the children were born type of thing. You're going to come in and say, okay, we might not do all of this till now, but you, Tracy, need to do your will, and this is how you should set it up. That's what you'll help me with that, right?
And even if we don't know what your ultimate plan is going to be, we can have an interim will, which if you want everything to go to your husband, that will happen without any issue. Or in the event that your husband predeceased, if you want everything to go to your children, we can have that interim will set up. That may not be the ultimate plan, but it covers you for a small amount of money, so that we don't end up with, as Joe said, an intestacy where the government states where the assets go.
Yeah, that's not good at all. And you guys know this stuff in and out, and sometimes I'm sitting here, I might not know, right, what to do and how to write that, and that's where you guys can help, right? It's good. Okay. I like the 101, if you can't tell. Just tell me what to do. You know my plan. Help me through this, because heck, I need to get back out in the field, guys, right? I'm a busy gal.
And that's exactly right. I mean, I don't know how to operate a combine, but you do, or your husband does.
Yeah.
We all have skills.
Yeah.
And so we should take advantage of those specialists.
That's exactly it. That's why we bring in this team, right? Because how am I supposed to know any of this? And if I try to learn all of this, guaranteed I'm not going to get it done, and I'm going to freeze up with the lack of knowledge.
And that is one thing that I don't think that we covered, and we should cover for all those advisors out there. When we are coming in to do a plan, we want to make sure that we have needs from you as a family too. We need you to supply us with the information. We need you to make your key employees, sometimes we'll interview, depending on the business, a key employee, because they'll give us perspective. And sometimes we will want your permission to speak to your accountant or your lawyer.
Okay.
It is important, because the last thing we want to do is create a situation where your professionals feel that our team are coming in to encroach on their territory.
Yes, that could be uncomfortable. Or I really like my lawyer.
And we want to use your lawyer.
Okay.
It's not always that all members of the team are third parties. Lots of cases, lots of our clients have quite capable lawyers and accountants and financial advisors and insurance brokers. So it's up to the client how it proceeds. And sometimes we will go to the accountant or the lawyer, and they'll say, well, you know what, I don't really like this touchy-feely stuff, and if you'd like to come in and help with this plan, we give them an assurance that it's not our intent to take the client.
Okay.
We're just coming in on a one-time basis to do this transition plan. It gives them a bit of a comfort zone.
Consult, and would you work with them on
Absolutely,
that? Yeah,
absolutely.
Okay. That's good too, because some farm families have their established professionals.
Certainly.
And that might also be a reason where they go, oh, I want to bring in somebody like George, but I live in a small community, and Bob over at finds out that I'm doing this. That's right. Those are toes that can be stepped on.
It's a valid concern.
Yeah.
And having somebody like George, a family enterprise advisor, come in is sometimes necessary. I mean, there would be times where different sides of the family require independent legal advice or independent accounting advice.
Okay,
Just to
good
make
point.
sure that the plan, even if people aren't having nefarious intentions, still just to make sure the plan can't be challenged. It's important that depending on the dynamics, that they have their own legal advice and accounting advice. And George can work between the parties to make sure they stay on the same track to keep the family going down that roadmap that the family intended to go down.
Okay.
So, Tracy, what we're going to do for your family, we're going to simplify your affairs, we're going to provide clarity, we're going to reduce your stress level, not increase it, and we're going to give you the maximum opportunity to achieve your objectives at the end of this process.
I love that.
That's, we're going to create a tax efficient plan. And what people have found is that if you do one of these plans, what we're all looking for is a return on investment. And you will obtain that if you have an appropriate plan in place.
I love that. At the end of the day, that's what we want, right? And that's why I wanted to do this episode, and we'll get into the third part of this series right away called Living the Plan. But this isn't that hard, and I want to remove those barriers, right? Me sitting here talking to you guys about this, I'm understanding it a lot better. And I'm big on that. If you don't understand something or you're scared of something, that just means there's a lack of knowledge. And if we can dig in and figure that out, we find the answers and we overcome that fear, right? Mm-hmm. Because you hit the nail on the head. It's not that there isn't conflict when we go into this too, right? There's various fears. And there's going to be communication and stuff that's going to come up. There's conflict already. It's just brewing underneath. It's not getting talked about, right?
Yeah, we're not always going to make it go away, but we're going to find some strategies to help manage that conflict so that it isn't destructive.
I love that. Okay, so that is the meat and potatoes. Did we cover all of your points?
I think there's one more.
I thought there was one more.
Touch on, and that might be an employment agreement. And I think that really sets it out, especially for that new generation coming in. It's not just mom and dad. Going back to work on a farm like I did when I was 12 years old, I knew exactly what my duties are. Having a formal employment contract really kind of hammers it home that this is a professional farm, that you have duties that you need to meet, and we have obligations as an employer to you as well. Even if you are part owner, you could still have an employment agreement in place. And I think that kind of is key in driving the message home with the next generation that, you know, it's not just you have duties as an employee to achieve on this farm.
I like that because maybe those bubbles there, they can kind of merge. And well, if it's mom and dad telling me that I just need to go do my job, well, they're mom and dad. They've nagged me all my life. Why do I need to listen? But if we treat it serious like a business, then I don't like gray. I really don't like gray in life. Let's just state what we want out of this.
Mm-hmm.
A job contract, right?
Exactly.
You are hired to be the accountant in the family, or you are hired for these duties. That's pretty black and white, right?
It is.
And I think that creates clarity, and clarity removes confusion.
And
conflict, yes.
You know, there's a famous story about father, chairman of the business, calls son into the office and puts his arms around him and says, "Son, I love you. You're fired." So that's sort of the two different areas, right? The family area and the business area. And so we want to make sure that the family are treated like third parties when the business is at stake.
Okay. Perfect. So that's great. You guys have learned about my family. You've gone back. You've put together a plan. You've come back and you said, based on where you guys want to go as a family, here's your options. This is what you can do. And we recommend these different agreements. Now, because nobody likes being told what they have to do, these are options, right? You're not going to come in and say, you've got to do that. Here's what we suggest that you guys do to protect your operation, right?
Mm-hmm.
Good. I'm just thinking of every single thing that might make somebody uncomfortable. Of course, we want to do it, but often we need a little bit of time to process, right? Those are big steps.
That's right.
Those are big steps for family farms that maybe just operate as family farms. If we want to start and take those into two different bubbles and operate a little bit different, those are big steps for some. And many farm families operate that way already. Kudos to them. I know many that don't.
And the plan could take 4 to 12 months to put together, and then the implementation could be 2 to 10 years, depending on how much of it is implemented. So these are long-term processes.
Good. That makes me feel a little bit better. Because I'm a busy farmer, like I told you.
Yes.
I told you guys that a few times. Okay, so that is great. I think that is a great spot to end for session number 2 in our mini series. And thank you guys for that. That is amazing. I think that really clarified a lot of different pieces for our audience on what they should be thinking about and talking about, and the value of bringing in an advisor and a team. So thank you guys for joining me. I am excited to see you back on episode 3 of our mini series. So stay tuned, and you guys stay tuned as well. See you soon.
You've been listening to Impact Farming. For more great episodes and articles designed to help you manage and grow your farming operation, head on over to farmmarketer.com. Don't forget to sign up while you're there. We will see you on the next episode.